Hello everybody. I have a very important video tonight, and of course all my videos are very important, but um, this represents some real progress that has been honestly years in the making. Um, the ideas I have, I've kind of just crystallized now, but it's a big deal in terms of my personal coming together, and I'm pleased to be able to share it with you all. So, um, I've already alluded in recent videos to the idea that I have a second soul, which I'm calling my clean soul. Um, and basically, I figured out what I was doing with this two soul business. Um, that's a that's very new, like last 6 months or less. Um, and I actually, when I conceived of this uh, new soul, my friend Bright actually made it for me into a real thing. But um, what matters is that, um, so I've been guided in a deep level by the Pythagorean theorem in my whole strategy with um, putting together different parts of myself. And I've known that I have uh, fiveness or four dimensionality, fourness or three dimensionality, and threeness or two dimensionality. That I have different parts with all of these different um, dimensionalities. And um, I so I realized that what I'm trying to do is very simply demonstrate the Pythagorean theorem on a 3-4-5 triangle. So um, the three leg of it is my threeness, the four leg of it is my fourness, and then the sum of those two squared gives me my fiveness squared. So that's how I'm going about trying to get to my fiveness, how to realize in simple fact my uh, four dimensionality of body. Um, so basically, what I'm leading up to is that um, I finally realized that this having two souls business is the squared part of each of those terms in the Pythagorean theorem. I had already been aware from much longer back that I had two like sides of my soul or something, two divisions of my soul that were somehow at right angles to each other, and I could really clearly and plainly tell that, but had a hard time with. It's hard to I couldn't fully picture it. But what I knew it meant was that these things are wholly, fully uh, separate from one another, not influencing each other as long as they maintain that 90-degree separation. It's like they're being two entirely different versions of the content of the same space. That if you, in the sense that I'm talking about, if you rotate something 90 degrees from itself, it basically the space supports two different versions in the same thing. And so finally, I realized I had been doing this with the Pythagorean theorem so much more straightforwardly and literally than I had dared to think until just a couple weeks ago. And basically that this having two souls at 90 degrees from each other, that allows me the possibility of of squaring the terms, which is necessary to make it work, but of okay, I think I've introduced it well enough. I'm gonna go into the meat of it, the diagrams. So the other major insight that I had to go to Edgewater and fail at that attempt and come back home to earn was the insight that there is some, to me, very mystical, abstract sense in which there is a feminine form of the same things that I am so well versed in the masculine forms of, by which I'm talking about my simplices and the pattern itself, as I have always figured it. That's just half of what naturally has an alternate feminine form that I, because of my sexual orientation, have never embodied. I've never had to be something feminine before, feminine in shape, and specifically in shape of the sexuality or the sexual, the sexuality. I'm going to leave it, it's a little bit vague, but leave it like that. So anyway, what I ended up with is a full plan for my two souls. The first one, I'm sticking by the traditional nomenclature, calling it my teenage soul, although really it's most strongly identified with my inner child, which is preteen, but I call it my teenage soul or my old soul. My new soul, I call my clean soul. And so I'm going to just show you what I have. So this is my clean soul, my new soul. Starting with that one, because that's the one I've been most recently working with and that I kind of have most clearly. And so this is very, very loose and preliminary. Not preliminary. It's very simplified, is what I'm trying to say. So, and I'll go back so you can read the text too. So, And the 555, 444, 333, those numbers come from my friend Bright, but have really worked themselves into my thinking too. But I would call them my fiveness, fourness, and threeness with lowercase letters. So anyway, I'll start with 444. It's male in shape, which means it has that simplicial tetrahedral thing going. It's the pointy one, um, the one that if you were to reduce it down to the lowest dimensionality, uh, appears as just like a rod, a kind of oscillating, jumping about rod, kind of as a phallus. Which again, I didn't think of it like that until coming up with this model here. That's a particularly masculine view or expression of what fourness is. So that is the part in blue, and I am in this case. Well, okay, so when I discovered the pattern, what I discovered was precisely the shape, the yeah, the shape and the process of that what I'm drawing as a blue triangle here on this page. That the motion of the pattern of fourness. Here I'm just putting down. I'm thinking of 444 time as I figured it way back in. I guess it was in 2018, prior to the 11/11/11 turning point, or it could have been right afterward. Anyway, I am referencing something I already published. So it's which the 444 time is just a much simplified, yet still largely or fundamentally true, kind of representation of the motions that go into the pattern of fourness. So that is what's represented by that blue triangle, and it actually is representing, in this case, a tetrahedron. So I'm just, flattening the whole thing. Now, the and that that in the content, what each of these parts of my soul contains data, and the content of this 444 in my clean soul is basically is all of the attributes that I've striven to achieve or to embody, that pertain to masculinity in the way that I, at the beginning of all this, thought myself lacking. So the story of both the red and the blue in this diagram is that of discovery of an eventual integration of masculinity. So, so then going up to the 555, Okay, so I already said that these three things are of different dimensionalities. It becomes kind of complicated and hard to. There are things that I still don't understand, especially when it comes to mapping between like 444 and fourness, say. Um, but I know that in some sense, 444 is the pattern of fourness, and that the pattern of fourness, just like the pattern of every level, can't be um, fully laid out, fully um, laid open, expressed, contained within the number of dimensions of its name. So the pattern of fourness actually requires a space of fiveness to have its being. Um, so I guess what I'm trying to say is, um, in this case, I'm clearly thinking of 444 as being tetrahedral, as being of fourness. Um, and that's part of why that lends the 444 time um, like interpretation or whatever to it. Um, but okay, so yeah. Anyway, so the 555 part is the part on the far side of the equation. 3 squared plus 4 squared equals 5 squared. So the part that when I combine the other two um, will emerge from that combination, and this is the first, well, female part that I'm discussing here now, and basically the the female part, I'm not even going to really try to describe it, except that to say that I think that in fourness, the best way that I can represent it is as a hollow ball, like a thick, um, solid ball with a hollow center, and it kind of is bigger than and encompasses the whole masculine part. Um, and in this case, it's one dimension bigger, so you have um, you just have a whole lot of room to play with. There's no risk ever that um, the the blue part is fully supported within the purple part, and no matter what orientation or how kind of chaotic it may choose to get in expressing itself, it's not getting out of the bounds of that purple part, the 555. So let's see. Um, so these dots here are referring back to 444 time, the idea of four runners that um, trace out the pattern of 444. But there's a modification. There's this kind of leading head, this wedge, which is of 333, and it's red, but it's not the same red as this down here. I'll get to that. What this is a masculine red, and this is if the 555, the female, is being penetrated, this is the leading part of the penetration. So the phallically, the glands of the penis. So the reason for having that there, though, is to prevent the simultaneous reading of 444 time as being as giving rise to 555, because one of the ways in which 555 is one of the ways in which the other world, kind of on the other side of things, is brought to being is by instead of looking at the four runners, looking at the gaps between them and adding one to each end, the beginning and the end, and getting thereby five runners. God just told me that was wrong. Yeah, the reason I put this here was to prevent reading, was to prevent reading the spaces between the runners as the runners instead. That's the reason for that. So the red down here, there's a lot written for that. So the red shown on the picture that I was just talking about, that is bright, serving as that placeholder to keep the space between the runners from being regarded. That is so I'm having Bright do that because I don't understand how to penetrate a female sexual form. I am kind of forsworn of it. Like one of the reasons behind my sexuality is that I've always perceived women as being like inherently sacred and pure and perfect, and I don't want to mess with that. I want nothing to do with the, I guess the word that keeps coming to mind is blighting of these perfect things. So Bright, as a trusted straight guy who also has possession of this thing called the 0 point, which I'm not even going to get into right now, but that's written there. So he's doing that for me. But the shadow, okay, so the shadow is a concept from Jungian psychology. This is going to be a long one. I didn't mean for it to be, but I'm just winging it. The shadow is the parts of yourself that you initially consider are not yourself, that you reject, that you don't identify with. Maybe that you're ashamed of, or you have unresolved feelings about. So, and I quickly identified that my threeness, just in general, was my shadow. That's what was meant, converting from Jung's psychology to my own metaphysics. That that's what that was. So, and there's a process called shadow integration of basically by means of making choices and um, acting. It all starts with awareness, but I've discovered it really comes down to choices, um, whereby you can kind of take that shadow, and instead of having it be like an anti you, you can kind of form it into like the boundary or the border of you, and fine tune like where it lies with respect to you, and basically make it part of you instead of being an anti you. Make it a part or an extension or a boundary of you. Um, and so this, I'm starting with the clean soul in part because that is the shadow that I have already over the course of my addiction rather pretty well integrated. I accomplished a ton over the past however many years. What is it? 10 years of addiction. In the sense of um, sexuality and masculinity. I had a lot of shadow work to do with that, and I ultimately did it, and I got to the the pinnacle, the highest, like the highest identification of what it was that I was missing as a young boy that I felt like everybody else had. What was the thing that because I was gay I was missing, and what I discovered was in a word, it's courage. Um, the thing that I need to express and focus on and believe in and choose behind to finish the shadow integration, bring it into my clean self is courage. I have to have courage, and that specifically means acting, doing the right action regardless of any emotions that might be involved, whether they be your own or somebody else's. So, um, and this was really, really, really hard for me to. Wow, somebody just. Wow, somebody's really angry outside. Um, Felt very connected to me. I feel like I'm maybe over emoting, but uh, anyway, I'll try to keep going. Um, so the fact that it was in a feminine shape, which I couldn't understand, made me to just villainize it in every way and um, think of it as this pure evil force or form, the Leviathan. Um, like, um, so it's not shown on this picture, um, but it is there at right angles to the blue part, um, which, as far as I can figure, means kind of like encircling it, um, and raising um, the red, raising up the blue, uh, joining at that right angle, making that right triangle. Um, that gives rise to the purple. So I'm gonna go. I'm getting indications that I am just taking too long with this, especially with that guy shouting his lungs off in the middle of the night thing. So I'm gonna just go a little faster. Okay, so I told you about that part of that shadow, and that shadow is fully formed, fully known, and is basically integrated. It's kind of a matter of maintenance rather than work itself to integrate it from here on out. So here's the teenage soul, my old soul, my original soul, and this one. There's differences in several ways. Basically, this thing with the squares of the terms, the 3 squared, 4 squared, 5 squared, the gender of the shape of these different components of my soul are they're alternating, and furthermore, they're joined up in male-female pairs. So I just told you about how my threeness in my clean soul is feminine. Well, here in my teenage soul, it's masculine, and the middle term, the blue triangle before, was masculine. In this drawing, the blue part, the 4 for 4 part, is going to be feminine. So they join together in a sexual union that basically I can, even though I don't fully understand the feminine and how to deal with it, I can understand like the union itself happens naturally, and I can understand that. I can understand how they fit together. So anyway, so 4 for 4 blue feminine. This is my inner child, which is literally who I was as a boy, up until puberty, pretty much until the right before the cusp of puberty. Literally who I was, and it's a boy. I'm gay. I'm not trans. I'm a cis male, and I had a boyhood, even though I later felt like I had a missing piece of my masculinity with respect to others. Basically, basically it was a boy. And I've been thinking of it as a little tetrahedron, a little shining light emitting soul in the way that I had been thinking of them, which is the masculine way. What I've discovered is that this was the really big insight that happened at Edgewater that made me that it was worth this is the insight that enabled me to trick myself into leaving Edgewater again, which is that I realized that I could retrospectively reinterpret my 4 for 4 as having the feminine shape with the same soul content, the same boyhood, but with a feminine cast to it. And if I do that, it produces a self of me that I've never been before, but that I can identify um, strongly, powerfully. That is truly who I am right now. If I'm not to change anything, if I'm just being fully myself and being as authentically me as I can be, um, basically, I saw within myself um, a a gay guy, a typical kind of well-adjusted gay guy, of whom I know many, like from LGMC, for instance, who kind of have. I don't want to belabor the point, especially since I'm trying to rush the rest, but um, it's a radically different way of viewing myself, and it's hard for me, and I'm uh, unsure of how to get there, but it's a revelation. It's a huge paradigm shift about who and what I am. Um, so that's enough said about the blue part here. Um, so I'm going to talk out of order based on this paper and talk about the shadow part. Um, the shadow, I have tonight been on the cusp of trying to figure out um, what do I need recovery for. And what it comes down to is that I have this second shadow that I didn't know I would need until I realized this whole thing about the squaredness of the terms of the Pythagorean theorem thing. Um, I have this whole big, long developed and fairly integrated shadow about my sexuality and my masculinity, but I don't have this other thing, which is basically the aggression side of the coin. Um, you think about Freud, and it all comes down to sex and aggression. I got the sex part down. I don't have the aggression part down. And what I found as its kind of its ideal, like the ideal for the other was courage. This, I think, is toughness, which I am pretty reluctant about. I don't really want to be tough. I want to be a fairy, um, but I need to be tough um, in order to complete the the theorem and get to my fiveness, which is what this is all about. So um, again, the shadow isn't itself shown on here, um, but and I haven't really thought through the geometry of it. But my I know that the beginning of my recovery, where I'm having to just follow directions and do what other people want me to do consistently over and over, that is to create the content of my new shadow. So my new shadow is nation. It doesn't really even exist yet. It's something brand new that I not just have to integrate, but also have to create. So the most exciting and perhaps interesting part is the 555 here. So 555 is, as an object, as originally presented to me, Bright says 555 is Fairy Traveler Ouroboros. Ouroboros, how do you say that? Which basically 555 is what I call fairy. The other realm that I identified as being my moon. Sorry, moon, as in like it orbits me. It depends on me. Um, it's an entire other world that I can describe quite well how it relates geometrically, but I'm not going to do that now. It's not really relevant. But basically, it's physically four-dimensional, but I, with trouble, discovered that it's not perceptually four-dimensional. So there's still it's still a three-dimensional kind of viewpoint that you have within it. So in the other one, I made a big deal about how the blue one was bigger, or the purple was so much bigger and more spacious than the blue, and there was nothing the blue could do to get outside of the purple. Well, the opposite is true here. The female one is blue, and the male one is of higher dimensionality. The male one is the bigger one. So the way I've represented this is that basically this is my attempt at a pentachoron, or a four-dimensional simplex, which has 5 points, and there's 4 tetrahedra joining at each point. Basically, I've shown that the blue here, the fourness, is able to contain 4 out of 5 points. So basically, the blue part is of fourness. It's three-dimensional, so it can encompass 1 tetrahedron's worth of these 5 tetrahedra. But it can encompass the whole thing. So it's basically 4 points are in it, and then the last point, this point out here, is sticking out of it, is not in it. And then I just realized that the cell here that's X'd out, there's a particular reason for that, and it cost me a lot of work and stuff to figure out that cell had to be left empty on purpose, and that's the cell that's surrounded by the blue. But I'm not going to go into why in particular that is the case. It makes simple sense, but it's a little bit more than I think I should get into now that God's told me to wrap this up, and I've already been talking for 40-something minutes. So that's all I got for you all tonight. Thank you for sticking with me. Thank you for your love.